present this Treasury, because even when it comes to this clear program that was a pronouncement on by the President and everyone else, there is a lack of funding and implementation from that level. We're saying Treasury must urgently fund these programs as an intervention on the crisis that we're facing as a country of high unemployment of the youth. The youth can continue to be unemployed when there's a budget set aside for them to resolve their own problems. Now, we're saying the Treasury Department must urgently act. Failure to, those that are responsible for that department must step aside and allow progressive people to take the country forward. We can't sit back and watch the National Treasury being used by those who want to take the ANC out of power as a tool to take the ANC out of power. We know very well that some of them are progressive because some of their policies that they make there are clear that they will never implement any pro-poor programs. We've seen the collapse of state-owned entities. State-owned entities are mainly created for a clear developmental agenda and to change the life of our people, especially those that have been affected by the injustices of the past. We've seen the delay on the appointment of the CEO of ESCOM, the same ESCOM that made the president to cut this trip short because there was an energy crisis in South Africa. You still delay to appoint its CEO. We're saying that all departments must go, all entities must immediately be placed in the departments responsible as per the resolutions of the ANC. We're calling upon the president to urgently act on that because it's clear that where they are placed, no one is monitoring them, they're not performing. Now we're saying the president must, because we can't allow state-owned entities to be collapsed in the interest of privatization. We know the clear agenda is that they must collapse so that they say they don't perform, then they're later privatized, which is against the ANC resolutions, that is against privatization. Now we're saying that all of these state-owned entities must immediately go to the responsible department and be given to young people to thrive. Because we can say we're the future of this country, but we're unable to drive organs of the state that must change the lives of our people. It can't be that also state-owned entities become retirement areas. Anyone who's from retirement is fetched from home to come and take responsibility of them. We're saying from boards to the executive, they must be given to young people who have been trained, who are ready to take them over and move forward because it's their future. We know very well that young people of South Africa will not agree to the privatization of their own state entities that must supposed to change the lives of our people. It is clear that they are collapsing everything, and no one is taking responsibility for that. The ANC Youth League on the retrenchment of post office employees. The ANC Youth League expresses concerns over possible post office business rescue plan. A restructured post office must prioritize job creation and accessible communication services for the poor of the poorest. The ANC Youth League rejects the notion of job losses and emphasizes that the Department of Communication and Digital Technology must take decisive action to prevent such retrenchments. It is imperative that an alternative solution and strategy are exploited to safeguard the livelihood of post office employees. The ANC Youth League urges the department to prioritize the well-being of the workers and ensure that any restructuring plan aligns with the broader goal of job creation and service accessible to our vulnerable people of our society. There must not be any restructuring that affects employment of our people. We're saying the Minister of Communication must urgently stop anything that has to do with the retrenchment. Failure to will join together hands with all progressives to fight until there is no retrenchment. If it means we must call upon the removal of the minister, we'll do that. We know very well also that the relationship of SASSA and the Post Bank is collapsing. because people want to further take the responsibility of the SASSA distribution to beneficiaries to private hands out of the hands of Postbank. We're saying we're clear that Postbank is a future commercial bank of South Africans. And all state-owned entities must be able to support that program. Now, any program that has to do with the collapse of Postbank, we are anti it, and we are ready as the Youth League to fight against any privatization of the Postbank until the bitter end. On the parliamentary release process, we are re-emphasizing our stand that we will not accept anything below 50% for youth representation in Parliament. We are not going to accept it. Anything below 50% for youth representation in all characters of power, we are not going to accept it. We are saying that young people must be in the legislature, must be in Parliament. Later on, they must be given executive responsibilities to run their own country. Now, if there's anything, anywhere, anyone dreaming, sitting somewhere, looking at the list to Parliament that has less than 50% of young people, must know that there will be at war with the ANC Youth League. And on the rent manipulation, it's a criminal offense to manipulate the rent. People have maximized profit at the expense of South Africans, mainly the middle class. The banks that were involved made profit out of stealing from South Africans. They not only steal their money, but they also affected the economy of the country, which later affected the job creation opportunities of this country and put a lot of people who are already in poverty in deeper poverty. We're saying that the banks that are involved, all government entities must detach from doing business with them. If it means that we must remove all our salaries from those banks, all government workers must never be paid from all of those banks. Because the government of South Africa can't be in partnership with criminals. And we're saying the penalties paid is not enough. They must be arrested. It's a criminal offense to manipulate the rent. We're shocked that even today they're still not arrested, even those that have admitted that they were part of the manipulation of the rent. They're roaming around, living big. They're even going further to fund other political parties to remove the ANC out of power so that we won't raise the issue of them being arrested. We are aware of that. We are aware that they're recruiting veterans because they want to give credibility to their criminality. Because they know without veterans who have a clear track record of fighting for this country, no one will follow their Mickey Mouse organizations that they are creating with an intention to take the ANC out of power. Now we're saying that the government employees, all of them, they must withdraw any business that they do with all of these banks that are affected, including removing our salaries from them. We're saying that the African Bank and the Post Bank must be equipped enough to take responsibility. Because the government of the people that they get from state-owned entities, or the middle class banking with them from wherever they send their labor. Now we're saying that we're calling upon South Africans who are conscious enough that they must not participate in any partnership or business with those banks who have been seen to be manipulating the rent. And we're saying criminal charges must be open against those ones. Now, and we're saying that it's an urgent matter. We'll have a discussion with the president, because we always engage the president that all those ministers that have been underperforming, who have not been spending their budgets, must be put aside, and those who have got energy to run must run. Those that have been participating in the manipulation of the rent must take full responsibility, and criminal charges must be placed upon them. Thank you.
Thank you, President. We've also been joined by the First Deputy Secretary General, Comrade Zagani Shiviti, and they are going to be part of responses to questions that you may have today. So I'm going to move forward to take hands for any questions that we may have. I'd want to also acknowledge the media house. So I know Liz Zega is from the Mail and Guardian, so she is going to be number one. And Tlantla. Yes. Is there any other hand? Okay, so we're going to take you first, Liz Zega. You can go for it.
I've got a long list of questions, but I'll start with three for now. Liz Zega, Collen, you say that you talk about these banks, their manipulation, and then trying to recruit some of your elders for legitimacy. There's been a lot of talk, at least in the media space, about funders having much more of a role in next year's elections, particularly with some political parties which are forming coalitions. Then now with Mr. Jati, there's been a lot of talk around corporate, him being a candidate of corporate. When President Cyril Ramaphosa was a candidate in 2017 for the ANC President, part of the reason that some people were lobbying for him was that he was friendly with corporate. That relationship with corporate seems to have disappeared and decimated in the past couple of years. What is your opinion of the President's relationship with corporate? Are you of the view that corporate has lost confidence with the President, and are you at all concerned, given our economic position as the country? I understand your call that NEFSAS its budget should not be increased, given how it's going to affect about 80,000 of students next year. And I think it's a noble call. And there are other critical departments, law enforcement, health as well, which have suffered from budget cuts from Treasury. But Treasury has been saying that they've been speaking of a fiscal crisis for some time now. Where does Treasury find this money? Because Treasury is talking about we don't have the money. Where can Treasury find this money? What are you proposing for Treasury in terms of finding money for these key departments and for these key institutions? You say that, Treasury also found that there was no proof in terms of the manipulation. Treasury also found that there was no proof that this manipulation damaged the rand or devalued the rand or damaged the economy. And why have the ANC Youth League not laid criminal charges? Why do you expect someone else to lay criminal charges? That's the critical answer.
Thank you. Yes, you can go.
Just your reaction, you touched on ANC veterans being used, especially those ones who have astronaut credentials. We heard the ANC weekend also touching on that. Just want to get your view. Yesterday we saw Mr. Mabuso coming out and saying that SG was wrong and demanding that he retract that statement. But he's also said something quite interesting when he said that he doesn't know how the ANC elected somebody like just your reaction to those remarks that he made.
Thank you. President.
Look, on the funders issue, it's evidence that because of the triple BE policies, the affirmative action policies, and many pro-poor black policies that the ANC has been pushing, a lot of these people who benefited from injustice of the past have been pushing back the ANC. They've been pushing it back using the DA. They've not succeeded. They've pushed back. Now they are saying that the only way is to form a moon peg to remove the ANC out of power, because what they want to do mainly is to reverse the policy positions of the ANC that are pro-poor, because they don't believe, according to them, they believe that, they don't believe that there was ever apartheid. They think blacks have changed their lives, they're all rich now, there's no problems in this country. When we know very well that they're the biggest participators, and they were the biggest participators even those days, to oppress majority of black people. Now, there's a clear program to push back the ANC because of their pro-poor policies. Now, that one is not a secret. That's why when you vote for the DA or any of these moon peg, even that one of Action SA, Mashaba said it openly that the first thing he'll do when he gets into office is to remove affirmative action and remove triple PE. Now, it's evident who's funding and what they're funding it for. They're funding it because they're irritated by policies that tend to empower majority of South Africans, which are blacks in majority. Now, we know very well why they are doing that. And on the issue of people who leave the ANC, anyway, when you leave the ANC is a voluntary organization. When you leave the ANC, you don't announce, you don't do a party and call press briefings. You just don't renew the membership. You just stay to not renew the membership and not participate. Now, but when you are sent to damage, they even give you media spaces to speak about why you are leaving the ANC and create a party around, because we know very well that they are profiling you towards a program of creating a faces that are mainly black, who are known in society to be revolutionaries. Even if we know that with time people change, because some of those people, they came back from exile. When they came back here, that house were put in pods. That's why some of the resolution of the ANC are not being implemented, because there are those who are behaving like prefects in the ANC. Now, anyone who lives in the ANC making noise, that person is leaving, is not leaving the ANC, is leaving to join a program to remove the ANC out of power. That happens, a voluntary organization. That's how it happens. On the budget cut, we're not retreating. You can't cut. On top of the crisis we're facing of access to education for all, you can't cut budgets there. We're saying that is areas where we must put more resources. On the president relationship with the past relationship with the private sector, and now, they thought that the president of the ANC is a puppet, where he'll go into office and reverse the gains. In the ANC, there's what we call collective leadership. President Ramaphosa is not alone. He implements resolutions of the ANC because he's elected in the ANC. Now, they thought he'll get there and do what he does not believe in, because they were profiling him as the person that they think is good for them. And when the president arrives there and starts implementing pro-poor policies, they start to fight with him, because he no longer represents what they thought he represents. That's why they're going around looking for their own prefects they've created in the private sector. And most of these people that they are using, just to remind you, some of them, when SABC boards, they were part of the collapse there. In many entities where they were part of the problem that caused South Africa to be where it is. If you can go back to their history. Others were in ESCOM. They're going around making noise everywhere. They were part of a problem to collapse ESCOM, because their obsession, they were sent there to collapse ESCOM and later privatize it. They were sent there to collapse SABC and later privatize it. Now, the ANC, because it's a strong organization, we've defeated all of those infiltration. Now they're coming out. They want to come out one by one. We know their plan. They've lined them up. They'll be coming out one by one saying that they're leaving the ANC because of that and that. Number two, the SG of the ANC is a product of the Congress movement. Well-trained leader. He did not wake up yesterday. He's not a poet. Maybe they wanted the ANC to elect a poet who will speak. The SG of the ANC is trained to implement resolutions of the ANC. He's a former SG of the Youth League, former president of the Youth League. Now, when you are saying that he has not been really prepared, which school prepares? Because he has been all the schools that prepare leaders of the ANC. How do you say somebody, it's only him and Nelson Mandela who have been SG and president of the ANC Youth League. Now, how do you say somebody who have been in the NEC for all of these years and say he was not, the bar is lowered by electing him? Now, you see, it's a clear plan. The clear plan is that target the president of the ANC, target the SG of the ANC, collapse the party, and create an alternative that speaks our language of privatization and enriching ourselves. That is the language. We are aware of it. And as the Youth League will defend the ANC with everything we have. We are not here for individuals. We'll defend them. If they want to leave, it's a voluntary organization, they can do that. But if they have a plan to collapse the ANC. They tried to collapse from within, they failed. If they try to collapse it externally, the Youth League is here to defend the ANC. We are not scared of anyone or anything. Whether you are, it's not our fault that we were not born during the 80s. We have a responsibility to protect the gains of freedom, and we are doing it now. Now, anyone who's going to attack the SG and the president of the ANC, or any NEC member of the ANC, will defend them, will defend the president and SG of the ANC, fearlessly so. We fear nobody. We are very clear, we fear nobody. We'll go, instead, it is wrong for the SG and the president to attack them and sit down, the Youth League will come out and defend them. Because they're not attacking them, they're attacking the ANC. Because when you attack the president SG of the ANC, it's an attack to the ANC. Now, we're saying that those who still call themselves veterans, if they leave the ANC, they lose those credentials. That they were spies. We don't know, we don't have proof, but we're hearing in corners that their spying ways is coming out. Now, don't worry. The Youth League will defend the people of South Africa because they know that the ANC is too big to fail. If the ANC is taken out of power, it will create a big opportunity to reverse first the gains of freedom, later on infiltrate Africa. Now, we're aware of all the things that they want to recolonize us using now black faces. It will never happen. Not when the Youth League is still alive. Maybe before the Youth League was, if the Youth League was not here, they'll do it. But when we're still here leading, we're ready to take them pound to pound every day in defending the hegemony of the ANC society, because the ANC is the only organization that on day-to-day basis strive towards change the lives of our people. Now, whether they want to use the media, even the media was very quiet on the banks anyway. We're watching you. On the banks, if it was the ANC minister that was corrupt, he stole money from government, you'll be writing about them until they resign. But because the big banks have manipulated the rent, you even write one-line stories about it. We see what's happening. And we're saying that we're watching, and we need the media of South Africa to be a media that is clearly biased to the people of South Africa, not serving agendas that are not known. Now, we're clear on those things as the Youth League, and we're unapologetic about it. We've told you Treasury has become anti-revolutionary. We're clear on it. There's no way, whatever Treasury is saying, how do they say there's no evidence of the manipulation of the rent when those who manipulated confirm that they manipulated and apologize, are ready to pay fines? Now, how do you say, when people have done the manipulation, are telling you that we've manipulated, when you come back tomorrow and say there's no manipulation, when those who have done it are telling they've done it? Now, it's clear that they are captured elsewhere. That's why we're calling upon the president to act on them. Because we can't afford a risk of having a treasury that is captured. We've made a clear call even before that the Reserve Bank must be in the hands of the state. Because all of these things are happening because the Reserve Bank is controlled by some partners, private partners. Okay? None of these banks have lost their licenses because we have a Reserve Bank in South Africa that is run elsewhere. Now, we're saying that including the Reserve Bank must be nationalized on urgent basis, because this is a clear example that this is what happens when your Reserve Bank is in the hands of private hands. Instead, we joke, how do we have a Reserve Bank when we have a developmental agenda? We have a Reserve Bank in private hands. Now, those are things that we've called upon, the resolutions are there. We're saying they must urgently be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Comrade SG, would you like to have a bite?
One issue. Thanks, Spokes. I'm just going to enter on one issue only, President. I think it's on the issue which was raised by Lizek on where must the National Treasury get the money from. Because there's been some kind of a view that South Africa is entering into a fiscal crisis. And this is a point the Youth League has made, that there is no such thing, that South Africa is having some fiscal crisis. There's no such. There's no such because evidence is pointing out throughout the world that when you are dealing with a fiscal crisis, or when you are dealing with fiscal management, you are dealing with three interrelated things. One is the taxes. Two is government expenditure. Three is government debt. Now, debt to GDP in South Africa is below 100%. But debt to GDP in Japan is around 200%. So where must the National Treasury get the money to fund all these developmental initiatives that the Youth League is proposing? You know, education, massive infrastructure development, injection of capital in the economy to grow it. The money is there in the international debt capital markets. That's number one. To borrow money for productive purposes. Not for consumptive purposes, but for productive purposes, because the net effect of investing, you are investing in the skills of the country, you are investing in the productiveness of the economy, of the workforce of the economy. Now, that is not a consumptive spending or borrowing. Now, so we don't understand when a person says there is a fiscal crisis in South Africa when we have not exhausted government bonds. By the way, the Youth League has argued that we need to review the Reserve Bank Act, actually, in order for us to be able to have our own government bonds within the South African shores. What happens now in South Africa? That is why we said the problem of South Africa at the moment is at a macroeconomic level. Because you can't say that you will be a sovereign country when your majority of your bonds sit elsewhere offshore in other, international debt capital markets. When you have an instrument called the central bank, your own central bank, but your own central bank cannot buy your own bonds in order for you as government to have the necessary capital to inject in these particular important instruments like education and massive industrialization in order to grow the economy. I mean, these are areas that we are saying the Reserve Bank must wake up. We're saying actually the governor of the Reserve Bank is sleeping on duty. Sleeping on duty. All he does is to increase interest rates when he wants to, lower inflation in the country. He's an inflation targeting fundamentalist. He doesn't want to grow the economy. He has no clear view of how to use the central bank to create full employment in the economy, to grow the economy in South Africa, to manage interest rates, because the cost of accessing capital in South Africa, the cost of accessing capital, very high. Meaning it's expensive to access capital in South Africa. And people who are managing that is the commercial banks. And these same commercial banks are manipulating the currency of the country, which is the country's currency, and thereby affecting the growth and development of the South African economy. So these are the issues when we are saying the governor of the Reserve Bank is sleeping on duty. He's a liability, and we're calling for the president to actually remove the governor. Kganyago is sleeping on duty. There is no governor of any Reserve Bank who would want to be recused from the manipulation of his own country's currency. He wants to be recused. He says, no, it's an issue of competition commission. But who is managing the country's money, the country's economy, the country's currency? It's the Reserve Bank and the National Treasury. And the president is correct. If they are not acting on the banks that have manipulated the economy, which is a treason in any country, where you manipulate the currency of that particular country, it means you have damaged its economy, you have devaluated the rand, and subsequently, if you look into the dollar-rand exchange, it means the rand has suffered over the period, and therefore South Africa did not earn any hard, currency over the period, because what happened is that the dollar-rand exchange was very low, meaning the rand was low compared to the dollar over the period. So where we are trading with the other currencies, the rand was weaker. It means it has affected the economy. So the National Treasury can never come out and say this has not affected the South African economy over the period where they have admitted, the president is saying, they've admitted the commercial banks that they've manipulated the rand. That is why the Youth League would have made a proposal to the president that, President, you must begin to take bold steps supporting banks like African Bank. Take all our accounts, the government accounts, into a bank like the African Bank that has not participated in the sabotage of the South African economy, as we see. Because these people who are saying they are representing commercial banks, as the president has said, now you have a Jardine who comes out and wants to be a paragon of good governance, or some kind, portraying himself to be a candidate of corporate. Candidate of which corporate? The one that has just manipulated the rand, that is sabotaging the economy, that is running a regime change in South Africa. And we still are not acting. People like the National Treasury Minister, they are dilly-dallying. They're saying, no, it's an issue of DTIC. Because Competition Commission is an entity of DTIC. You can't say the currency, people who should be looking at the currency, is DTIC. That can never happen in any country. So I think, Lizeka, in answering your questions, we have made several proposals in terms of the reforms that must happen, and the Youth League has expressed itself on those particular issues. I think, thank you very much, folks.
The DSG is going to come forth and speak on the NSFAS issue, and then we'll take any follow-up questions afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you, spokesperson, and greetings to the media and everyone who's here. Like the president said, we have a problem here, wherein you have children of the poor who are supposed to access institution of higher learning, and then we have a department that sit somewhere and decide to cut the budget of NSFAS. NSFAS is the only vehicle that the poor children of this country depends on, and it's funding children that are part of SASA, that are dependent on the state for survival. Now, if we are saying that we are cutting the budget of NSFAS, what we are actually saying to children of this country who have hope, who are also the future of the country, we are saying that you do not have the future anymore, you cannot access institutions of higher learning anymore, education of this country is not for you, it's for those that are rich. We are now going back, we are not going forward. So the ANC Youth League will not sit back and watch people take us back. We want to move forward as a country. Hence we are saying that we are against the cut of budget of NSFAS. We can't allow that. It can never happen in our lifetime. So now, what we are saying is that there must be a way that we go and find money to fund education of young people of this country. We have resolved as an ANC Youth League that we must enter into the stage of reindustrialization and industrialization. Now, if we don't equip young people with education, where are we going to have expertise that we need to grow the economy of the country? Because now we must be at the stage wherein we are saying skill, reskill young people. Now, when we are taking the vehicle of skilling young people to become fully fledged people that we want, drivers of the economy, what are we then saying to the country? Are we saying that we are ready to see this country to go into collapse? What we are saying, we are re-emphasizing as the ANC Youth League is that our role is to guard the interest of young people. And we're not going to fail in that role. We're not going to keep quiet when people are making sure that the role of the ANC Youth League is disturbed. The youth of this country need to be educated. There is no country in this world that has ever achieved anything with uneducated youth. Young people must be educated. The role of young people is to learn through education. And we are going to make sure as the ANC Youth League that that role is not compromised. Thank you.
Thank you, DSG. If there are no other further questions, we thank you. This brings us to the end of the press briefing.